NFL draft analyst Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. And Matt, we're excited about this one. A lot of talk about Marcus Mariota and whether or not the Jets take him at 6. Matt, is he going to be around past the second pick in the draft?
I don't think he will. I think if Tennessee is smart, they just go up and take him. They obviously have a need at quarterback. I don't think they should make a trade. If the Jets wanted to move up and go ahead and take him, they're going to have to probably give up, wheelbarrow-size full picks. I know it's only a few spots, but they're going against a team that just has a definite need. So I don't see the Jets moving up and taking Mariota in this year's draft.
Well, if the Jets don't move up, what do you see them doing?
I can see them staying pat, taking a wide receiver. They definitely need somebody. If Cooper is available, they could take him. I think the smarter option would be to take Devontae Parker. He has the measurables of a Kevin White, but at the same time, he actually has the production, which Kevin White does not. Devontae Parker, he measures out statistically in our metrics similar to A.J. Green. I think the Jets fans would actually like to have an A.J. Green-type player outside on a wide receiver spot next to Eric Decker. That would be a great combination long-term until you eventually get a stable quarterback in there.
I just got excited. I feel like Matt's talking dirty to me or something. Like that just got me going. Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com. So, Matt, we hear this time of year, teams go best overall. So at that 6th pick, is wide receiver going to be the best overall position available that you guys are believing at PredictionMachine.com?
Yeah, I think it's a spot that they have the most need. Defensively, the Jets are fine. Along their offensive line, they have some options, but there's just no player in this year's draft class that just kind of warrants that top 10 pick. Devontae Parker from Louisville. He is one of the top 5 players in this year's draft class, according to our rankings. So for us, he not only fits a need, but he fits value for them.
Now, some of the news we're hearing now is that teams are on the move trying to get Mo Wilkerson away from the Jets. Is there any prediction on the possibility of that and what it could mean for the Jets in the draft?
If the Jets do decide to trade Mo Wilkerson, they better be getting a couple number 1 draft picks and even a few second rounders. He's just so dominant. I mean, you guys have seen that. Everybody's seen it across the league. So if the Jets do decide to give him up, I think the talk now is just because teams are trying to pry him away because he hasn't signed that long-term contract, and the Jets automatically see that as something as a trade value in some ways. But if they do give it up, there's nobody in this year's draft class outside of a Leonard Williams that could bring the same value to them. If they were able to trade him up and then be able to get Williams and maybe even a Mariota, if that's what the Titans were to go for, that could be a possibility. But I don't see them trading Wilkerson. I see them this is kind of a game between a contract negotiations right now.
I swear I'm geeking out right now. This is getting me fired up. Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com. Matt, speaking of big trades that could happen in the draft, you mentioned Tennessee at number 2. Does that mean that PredictionMachine.com is not predicting that Phillip Rivers gets traded by the Chargers and nothing happens there?
Yeah, nothing will happen there. We just don't see that as a possible viability for the Titans. I mean, if we're going off the assumption that Phillip Rivers has 4 to 5 good years, but that's actually a kind of a wrong analysis if you kind of take it. He might only have 2 or 3 good years, at which point the Titans then would just be back in the same position as they are. And at the same time, Rivers is going to need a new contract extension for this is his last year. So the Titans are in a rebuilding mode right now. They're 2 to 3 years away from being a playoff caliber team. Even with Rivers and his $20 million contract over the next 2 or 3 years, that's not a position that you guys that the Titans are going to be wanting to put a bunch of money into on a player who's only going to be there for another year or 2 once they finally make it. So the Chargers it might be in the Chargers' best interest to move up and take Mariota. It's not in the Titans. That's why we don't think it will happen.
And on top of that, Matt, too, predicting or knowing what the value it takes to get Phillip Rivers out of San Diego and what needs to be given up for him is quite the debate as well. I have seen the spectrum all over the map. What do you guys predict that it would take to get a franchise quarterback, if that's what you want to call him, and Phillip Rivers out of San Diego?
I think you would probably see 2 first-round picks, a second-rounder, and 2 third-rounders. But then, again, you're doing that all for a 33, 34-year-old quarterback who you don't know how long they can play. Everybody likes to think that people are like Favre or like Manning who can play almost to their 40. But there are a number of quarterbacks historically, if you look at, they kind of hit a wall at 35, 36. You look at Donovan McNabb, Jake Delhomme, 2 guys that were, relatively really good quarterbacks, and all of a sudden they just fell off a cliff. and that's going to happen to Rivers at some point. Who's to say it's not going to happen next year or the year after?
Okay, speaking of when you reach that age where production falls, this is Matt Richner with Armen and Levack on 104.5, the Team ESPN Radio of PredictionMachine.com. Matt, what about Adrian Peterson? Around 30 years old, everybody asking if his production is going to fall. Is he going to be traded from the Vikings by the time the draft hits?
I don't think so. I just think his contract is too high. I mean, by the time everybody's kind of done with this year's draft class, I think you're going to the teams that have the need for running back, let's say Dallas, let's say Arizona, these teams are probably going to go up and select a running back early in the first or second round, which eliminates the number of teams out there. And so right now there's like 4 or 5 teams probably. A couple of those are going to fill their spot with a running back in the draft. And then at that point, who can take on that $12.5 million for a 30-year-old running back? He's more than likely just probably going to spend this next season in Minnesota, and then after that, he'll probably either be cut or traded.
All right, so now we got the other New York team, the New York Giants, sitting there, and they have been known to throw us a curveball and not take who we expect. Who do you see them taking?
I'd like to see them take Bud Dupree, the outside linebacker from Kentucky. Here's a guy who's the number one rated pass rusher at the outside linebacker spot. According to our metrics, he averaged over 2.3 impact plays per game. An impact play, if you kind of think about it in baseball terms, is almost like a home run. It's a play like a sack, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble, and interception. He had the highest average and the highest total in this year's draft class amongst all pass rushers. He's a physical freak. It's someone like a Jason Pierre-Paul, but he actually has his head screwed on straight. I just think he's one of the most underrated players in this year's draft class. And if the Giants can somehow, if they could even trade down, pick up a pick, because I don't think he's as valued amongst the league as some other people think. Pick up Dupree and then maybe even pick up another draft pick, and I think that would be the Giants would have pretty much a home run on their hands.
Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com. Now, Matt, obviously the Giants in the past they've always gone best overall, and being where they're at this year in the early first round, offensive line is the position a lot of people are talking about. If they were to go offensive line, who is available that you at PredictionMachine.com believe would be a good snack for the Giants at that spot?
Brandon Sheriff from Iowa is one of those kind of key guys. What you like about him is he might not end up being the top left tackle in the NFL, but he's going to always be like either a really good guard or a really good right tackle. So he's one of these guys that you can kind of just plug, and regardless of whatever position he ends up at, he'll be a quality 8 to 10 year pro, and a guy who's kind of one of the top echelon players at his positions. La'el Collins from LSU is another big guy. I don't foresee him being as much of a left tackle as I do a right tackle. One guy that I wouldn't be surprised if they took a run on later in the draft, if they decide to go with offensive tackle, is Jake Fisher from Oregon. He's a mobile guy, who's kind of suited for a zone scheme versus a man blocking scheme or a power blocking scheme. But I think he just has that versatility to go to play both sides of the line. That even if the Giants do decide to go offensive tackle early on, if they can somehow get Fisher there, a versatile offensive tackle like him is extremely valuable in today's NFL game.
All right, so as we look at this draft board, who's the guy who's climbing that other people aren't expecting to climb that you guys see moving up?
Someone like Carlos Williams, the running back from Florida State. Here's a guy who averaged 2 more yards per carry in the second half of games than in the first half of games. That's the highest increase when you look at the 2 halves of any running back in this year's draft class. Titus Davis, the wide receiver from Central Michigan. Here's a guy that, according to our metrics, actually graded out to be very similar to Devontae Adams, last year's second-round pick from the Green Bay Packers. Now, Adams had a fantastic rookie season and looks to be a solid starter there for Green Bay for the next long term. And we think Titus Davis, who broke a number of records, single-season and career records of Antonio Brown there at Central Michigan. Antonio Brown has obviously had a great career at Pittsburgh, and so Titus Davis, along with matching up with Devontae Adams, we see him as being a huge sleeper in this year's draft class.
How many running backs do you think are going to go in the first round at PredictionMachine.com? How many because in today's world, Matt Richner, PredictionMachine.com, we are led to believe that running back, you don't want to take that early on. You can take them late because the value of the position has gone down. Are we going to see that take place this year?
I don't think the position is as devalued as some say. I just think that in this year's draft class, there's so many quality running backs. We have 5 guys with at least a first-round grade. Now, I don't think 5 guys will. I think if you conservative estimates, I would say 3. In my conversations with talking with teams and our projections, I think you have Gordon, Gurley, and then I actually wouldn't be surprised if Tevin Coleman from Indiana actually slipped in there into the late first round in that 31 or 32 spot.
All right, so we did the positive. Who could climb? Who are the guaranteed busts due to prediction machine?
Well, first overall is Kevin White, the wide receiver from West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Here's a guy, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He kind of has the measurables that everybody liked, but at the same time, he never actually had the production that anybody wanted. He only had 21 career receptions of 25 or more yards, which gives him a big play rate of just 15%. That equals 31st amongst this year's crop of wide receivers. Here's a guy with 76% of his production was just in 1 year. High percentage of draft busts are all one-year wonders. So here's a guy that, while he might be big and strong, he actually didn't dominate anywhere at West Virginia. I know he had a pretty good season, but so did Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey, but Justin Blackman played in the same system at Oklahoma State, and he's been a terrible on and off the field kind of guy. I don't think Kevin White has the off-field issues that Justin Blackman has, but at the same time, just because a player has somewhat good production in Dana Holgerson's offense doesn't mean they actually translate to the NFL. I could see Kevin White as being one of the major draft busts in this year's draft class.
So you're saying he's going number 4 to the Raiders, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where he's going.
That's Levack speaking as a true Raiders fan, by the way. That's exactly what that is, Matt. Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com. Hey, Shane Ray, the defensive end out of Missouri, got busted for marijuana possession this week. McShay had him going as high as number 5. Now people have him falling like a rock. How far does he fall because of the marijuana possession?
I think he'll fall. He should. Where we have him projected where he should be drafted is either probably very late second, early third round. Here's a guy who just didn't have many impact plays in college. He only averaged 1.3 impact plays per game. If you look at on the opposite side of the field of him, Marcus Golden from Missouri, he was a much better defensive end. He was a guy that had a limited number of rushing yards to his side. He was more of a 3-down lineman. Shane Ray is just kind of the situational pass rusher. And you can combine that with the fact that he has poor decision making, obviously getting busted for having a little Mary Jane in his car. Well, little. He 3/4, 0.35 ounces. So he looks like he was going for a good time that night or early morning. It just speaks to his decision making. He's just not a very smart guy, obviously, off the field. So I could see him just dropping. But then it comes to a point of risk versus reward. If you're spending that third round on him, you're not spending a whole lot of money, but you're hoping to at least get a quality situational pass rusher. That's where I kind of definitely see him going now.
We've heard nothing but that this is a terrible year for selecting a quarterback, that the quarterback talent is just really low in this year's draft. Does your research tell you that as well?
Yeah, this is similar to the 2008 draft where you had Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco going, in the first round, and then after that you had your Chad Henneys and your Kevin O'Connells of the world, your backups or your third stringers, and that's what this year is. You have, Winston and Mariota are obviously solidified as the 1-2, regardless of wherever anybody ranks them. Then you have 3. You have Garrett Grayson, who's from Colorado State. He's a very, very much like Chad Henne. He won't be a long-term starter. He's probably a really good backup, a long-term backup, which in some cases in the NFL has tremendous value. So anybody who's able to get him into the second or third round, that's great. But after that, you have Brett Hundley and Bryce Petty, who both have their extremely red flags and flaws to their game. Some people, we don't project them to be any long-term starters, even quality backups. I definitely don't see Bryce Petty as being anything more than a guy who's probably around 3 or 4 years. After that, he'll probably be out of the league. He just fails in a lot of areas of the game that you need to be able to be successful in the NFL, such as red zone, such as third and long situations. He just didn't complete his passes, and that's why we don't think any of those guys, Petty or Hundley, should be anything more than a 5th or 6th round pick.
We mentioned the other 2 New York teams. Now we have to throw the Buffalo Bills fans a bone. I know it's not first round, but as you look deeper, is there anybody out there that is going to be an impact player for the Bills in the second round still?
If they can get Laken Tomlinson, the offensive guard from Duke, I know it's not necessarily the sexiest position, but he's probably one of the top 20 players in this year's draft class, and he's just dominant power guy. And so the Bills are definitely going to be going to that running game. They obviously need a quarterback, but there's no quarterback in this year's draft class that can just kind of step in and start for them where they're picking right now. So they might as well just build for the long term and just solidify that offensive line. So that way next year, when they eventually are able to draft a quarterback, hopefully in that kind of in those first 5 or 10 picks, because if they do end up in there, if they kind of have a down season with no quarterback play from E.J. Manuel, I would solidify that offensive line, and my first spot for them would be Lincoln Tomlinson, the offensive guard from Duke this year.
Matt Richner of PredictionMachine.com with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. Give me some steals later on in the mid to late rounds that if one of our New York sports teams get one of these guys, we can consider him to be completely undervalued and a great pick where they grab them.
I like Max Dallas out of the outside linebacker from Virginia. Here's a guy that he's a redshirt sophomore. He only played in 22 games, but he has the kind of the height, weight, speed that everybody kind of likes from the outside linebacker. 6'5", 251. We have him as the second best outside linebackers in this year's draft class, and I know not a lot of people are talking about him as many, but he's talking about him. But he averaged 2.14 impact plays per game, which is the second highest among all outside linebackers. He's still raw, still undeveloped, but so was someone like Aldon Smith, and Max Dallas had actually statistically production that was very similar to Aldon Smith, the outside linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I'm not quite sure if Dallas has the same off-field behavior as Aldon Smith, but according to everybody I've talked to, he's a pretty straight and narrow kid. He came out a little too early. He probably should have come back, but if you can get him in that mid to late round and kind of really work on his development, he's pretty much a diamond in the rough. You just need to kind of brush off some of the dirt on him. But after that, I think you maybe end up getting the steal of the draft if you can find him.
Woo, love it, man. Matt Richner
Nice.
of PredictionMachine.com. Matt, of course, at PredictionMachine.com. We know you guys are all over the NFL draft. We'll continue to check out the website. Thanks for your time today, man. We're excited about Thursday night.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys have a great day.